We are going to create an art journal page with just a little bit of color that we're going to add with our watercolors. So I have here a big palette, or you can also use a small palette of paints, whatever you have in your stash. And I'm starting by using a wet brush, taking just a piece of paper to have near me to clean the brush whenever I need to. And I'm just starting to add a little bit of yellow, very slightly and very gently. I'm working with my brush on the paper. I don't want to cover the entire surface of the art journal page with paint. I just want to add highlights of color, very faint and very subtle colors. And I'm going to use only 2 colors, maybe 3 colors. I don't want it to be too colorful. This is going to be a minimalistic page. So while I'm applying the watercolor onto my page, I'm using the wet brush to pull it in different direction and to spread it on the page. So if I have too much color on one spot, I simply add some water to my brush and take it to another place on my page that I don't have any color on. I'm pulling and pushing the paint. I'm taking it with the moisture of my brush to wherever I need to. I'm going to add very little green as well. And you can see that when you spread the water, you spread the color with the water, the color becomes really faint and really not very visible. And that's what I want, a very faint and blurry background. So I'm just adding a little tiny bit of blue, also very light blue. And you can see that we are working on dry paper. So whenever I need to wet my paper, I do it with the brush, and I am mixing the watercolors on the page as I work. So if I have yellow and then I have the green or the blue, I simply add them onto the page itself, and I'm going with my brush inside the color that I had there before, and then they blend together. And then you can see how subtle the effect is. And if you don't like how the border between the 2 colors look, you simply add more water and you blend them together further. So I have created just a little bit of watercolor background here on my page. Again, very subtle, mainly yellow, a little bit of green, and just a little tiny bit of blue. And some part the colors are a little stronger than other parts, and again that depends on the amount of water that you add. The more water you add, the more you dilute the color, and then the color becomes less visible, more subtle, and blends more to the background. So now I'm just adding 2 circles. After all, you do have a brush and you do have a paint. Watercolors are paints, so you can draw and paint with them. So I've added 2 yellow circles and also a few teal circles. I don't care that they are not exactly perfect, that's just fine. I just want the contrast between the background, which is kind of just paint all over the page, and the shape, the defined shape. This is the contrast I want to create, and I just need a little bit more paint here, so I'm just adding that as well. And you can see that no painting or drawing skills are necessary on this page. because we are just adding color and circles. That's what we did so far. And all you need is the water brush and the watercolors. And you can see on that large circle on the bottom right that I've done the circle with blue and then added a little bit of yellow on top of that. So I've layered the watercolors instead of mixing them. So I'm just finishing my background, and I think that I'm very happy with the result of the background so far. So the next step would be to thoroughly dry the page. You can use a heat tool if you have one, and if you don't have one, just leave the page to dry in the air. But before you move to the next step, you have to make sure it is completely dry, because if it's wet, we need to add details with a pen and stamps, and if it's wet, everything will smear and smudge, and you'll get really mad that you've ruined your art journal page. So I'm going to take a butterfly stamp with permanent ink. When you work with water, it's very important to use permanent ink and not water-based ink or distress ink or something like that, because that won't hold. It will smear. This is an archival permanent black ink, and you can use whatever stamp you have in your stash. I like the butterfly, but you can use a shape or a word or an image or whatever you have in your stash. And the next step is just to add details with a black pen. Again, the pen needs to be permanent. I'm using Sakura pen, Micron Sakura pen, and you can use Sharpies, you can use whatever type of permanent pens that you have, so it won't smear, and it needs to be waterproof, of course. So the adding of the details is really an individual part of your art journaling. Again, no drawing skills are required. The details are added with the black pen. I'm adding circles, lines, numbers. These are all shapes that anybody can do. You don't need special skills to do that, and it's just a matter of the way that you add them to your page. I'm adding it from the center outward, and basically most of the details are going to be near the butterfly, and then some of them are going to be around the page. So you want one focal point for your page and then add more details around it. So again, the circles don't need to be accurate or even or symmetrical. They just need to be in different sizes, so it will be a little bit more interesting. So some of the circles are very close together, and some of the circles that I'm adding are just separate on the page. You can see how I do that. And you can immediately see how the page gets another dimension. The next thing I want to do is just add little dots with my water brush and teal watercolor just in the background. This is another layer to the art journal page. We have the first layer of the background, and then we have the same colors we used on the background but in more defined shapes like the dots, and then finally we have the details in black. So this is the layering of the art journal page, and I like to use a quote to every art journal page that I create, and this quote is, "Don't wait for an idea so you can get started. Get started so you can have ideas." You can use whatever quote you want, or you can leave out the quote altogether if you don't like adding quotes. So basically, I just want to add a little bit more color around the butterfly just to make it more visible and just to give it a little bit of a definition with paint around it. And I'm using the same colors, of course, that I've used to create the background, and I'm just adding them a little bit around the details that I've added. It will make them pop out more. So basically this is the first page that we have created in this class, and you can see how the watercolors create that addition of color and details, but not in a strong and in your face kind of way. Just adding a few more details with my pen, and I think we are done. So this is our first page. You can see it's minimalist on one side, but on the other side it has lots of details. Thank you for joining me, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you in the next video.